enough. A tough scene with the injuries. Plus, the Wizards come to town. All this and more on Locked On Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast, part of the Locked On Network. Thanks for making this your first listen each and every day. We're free and available on all platforms. My name is Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network and the Nuggets insider for 104.3 The Fan in Denver. He's Adam Mares, director of content for DNVR. You can find his work at thednvr.com and follow him on Twitter at Adam_Mares. Before we get started, make sure to check out our YouTube page. You get to see our beautiful shining faces and our exasperated side eyes at one another during the show. You also will help us out. That if you want to know, like, how can I help these guys out? I love these guys. That's the best way to do it. Go to the YouTube page, subscribe, and like the show. That's the best way to do it. Help us out with YouTube. Today's show is brought to you by TrueBill. TrueBill is the new app that saves you money by helping identify and stop paying for the subscriptions you don't want or need, and can even negotiate better deals on those you want to keep. We're also brought today by PrizePicks. Check out PrizePicks.com and use promo code NBA, or go to your app store and download the app today. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. On today's show, we're going to talk about the two games versus San Antonio. We did not get to a recap because the first game was a schedule loss and things got away from us at the end of the week. And then the next game was on Saturday. So we're going to talk about those two games. We're going to recap the road trip in aggregate and like this really brutal stretch of road games, this nightmare schedule. How did the Nuggets come out of it? Where are they now? Etc. We'll talk about that.
You know what, Matt? We keep referring to this as like the end of the road trip. The weird thing is they start a new road trip on Thursday.
Okay. Road trip one, part one.
It really is. That is how it is. A part one and part two. We're just at halftime.
Fellowship of the Nuggets. The next one will be the two towers, I guess. And then in the third segment, we'll talk about the Wizards game coming up and what can they do about the injury situation, if anything. We'll talk about that at the end of the show. All right, Adam. The first game versus the Spurs. It's tough to get. It's tough. Honestly, a lot of teams have struggled to win either of the two games when they're on this away and away, especially if they lose that first one. They actually have not done very well in that second game, but Denver is able to right the ship and get the second game. I know that you don't have any notes from that first game. It was very much like it was a scheduled loss.
Yeah.
They were on a back-to-back. They were exhausted, and the defense simply was not there. Like that was the real problem in the first game. Was the defense.
Rebounding in particular, the rebounding
stuff,
portion
yeah.
of defense. Yeah.
So, I mean, they gave up 14 offensive rebounds, and like Malone made jokes about how it's like the first, second, and third thing, what comes before first, like all these type of things. A lot of it was just very evident in that fourth quarter that they did not have any bursts, so they could not get to loose balls. They could not stop line drives. Like the Spurs were getting straight line drives all over the place, and that's really how they cooked them.
So I actually want to go back because I agree with you. The Nuggets, Jokic checked back in. I think it was a 5-point game. I tweeted out, if this is within 7, I feel good about it. And then Denver just it's like they hit the burners and nothing happened. It's like, okay, we're out of turbo. But I actually thought the part that stood out the most to me in terms of like fatigue was the first quarter. And I know Greg Popovich is probably great at this, knows Denver's on a long road trip, knows they're fatigued. They came out right away and were pressing. They were everything was so fast with them. They were playing at such a fast speed. And I thought Denver, like in that first quarter, you looked at them and you go, like, one team's going about 30% harder and faster in this game already. And you just knew it was going to be a tough one.
So I have a question for you. How much do you care that they don't have effort in that kind of a spot? I feel like a lot of Malone clearly cares. He knows that it's tough, but he's not able to not hold them accountable, which I don't know if that's good or bad. The fans I'll say this. I think the hardcore fans are usually like, if you watch the Nuggets year in and year out, then you know the NBA enough to be like, Like
that's the thing about it. Yeah. So that's the thing about it, man. Like, how much do I care? Look, they've overcome it before. So you always look at it and say, hey, did you compete? Do you try? Denver didn't have it that game. I can't be too upset about it. Like you said, we've watched enough of these. We know what the numbers say. The numbers say a team in that spot loses like 80% of the time. They didn't have it that night. They bounced back and had a great, what I thought was a great game on Saturday that made up for it. And it turned the trip into a 4 wins, 3 loss road trip, which is, if you told me that going into it, I would say, yeah, that's probably par or better. Really, that's like, there was no par, but that was slightly better than par. So that's pretty good. I get like a B minus on the road trip overall. And more to the point, they looked really good in that game. It was a good bounce back. Like the things that concerned you about in Spurs Nuggets 1, they made up for in Spurs Nuggets 2. So you're like, okay, that was probably a fatigue thing.
Over the last 2 weeks, and we'll talk about this more in the recap over the road trip, the Nuggets have the 5th best offense in the league. They are looking very much more like the team that we kind of expected, right? The early season defense is, I think, eroding, but the offense is kicked back up. Well, let's start here. What was it that you liked so much about the game on Saturday? What was so impressive to you?
Well, obviously, the number one thing that was impressive was Nikola Jokic. I mean, that was an all-timer from him. By game score, I think it was his best game of the season. Not that that's the perfect metric, but, it was just impressive. But the thing that stands out is they got out-rebounded by 21 rebounds in that first matchup. That wasn't the case in the second one. They just got beat in transition and all this. That wasn't the case in the second one. So they just looked more cohesive. And what I would actually say is, if you break this trip down and say the Miami game, the Knicks game, the ones they won, the Miami game, the Knicks game, the Pelicans game, and the second Spurs game, the ball got popping in those games. The defense was solid, but more importantly, the offense looked connected. They played, there was great passing, not just Jokic passing. There was great passing from a lot of different guys. And to me, if I've always said, if this Nuggets team like really inspires you to believe in them, it's going to be through that. So in their 4 wins, the team looked like the team you expect them to be. Not just they made shots, but the ball got popping and they looked good.
This is a small thing. I feel like Aaron Gordon, whenever he has a bad game, effort-wise, bounces back really hard. Like you don't see Aaron Gordon have back-to-back poor games in terms of
Right.
Does he execute? Is he making, like, he might not shoot well in consecutive games, but
Right.
he will have back-to-back games where the defense is there. Like, he won't have back-to-back games where the defense is not there, where he's getting beat off on drives, where he's not getting rebounds, where he's not moving the ball with intention, where he doesn't look comfortable and looks disjointed. Like, he tends to snap back pretty well. That's been, I think, one of the things that's kept Denver afloat so far this season.
I like that. I would agree. I think that's true of, I mean, it's obviously true of Yoke. Not that he has down nights, but I expected him to have a big game in the second San Antonio game for that very reason. Like, if he plays below his average one night, he usually bounces back. And I think the same is true of Gordon. So I think that's a really cool thing. Aaron Gordon is another one of these storylines. Hopefully we lead us into a Jokic conversation in segment 2, because I want to go into it. It was that much fun. But Aaron Gordon, every game, I do feel like he's getting more and more chemistry with Jokic. Not just chemistry is not even the right word. Like, he's reading the court better. It's almost like I would love to ask him this whenever they have a practice again and we get to talk to these guys face to face. I'd love to just pick his brain for if he feels like his basketball IQ is improving. Because I feel like that's part of it, is he's learning a new style of basketball and he's picking it up really quickly.
Let's take a break. We'll come back. We'll talk about Jokic, and then we'll talk about the road trip in aggregate. I do want to touch on one more player that stood out from that Spurs game. We'll do that and a little bit else, a little bit more when we come back on Locked On Nuggets. But first, I want to tell you about DirecTV. If you're looking to watch the Nuggets, you want to check out DirecTV. If you've got all these different devices where you're trying to watch this thing on that thing and this thing on that thing, and I've got to get this login on this other device, and then on this other one, I've got this, why don't you just scrap all that and get everything together in one place? A way to get all the entertainment that you love without the hassle. It's called DirecTV Stream. It brings your live TV and on-demand favorites together like never before, so you can watch your favorite sports, movies, and shows all in one place. No more juggling remotes and no need to buy another device ever again. And the best part, there's no annual contract. Get rid of the clutter and the confusion and get your TV together with DirecTV Stream. You can learn more at directtv.com. That's directtv.com. Compatible device required. Content varies by package. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for making us your first listen each and every day. We are free and we are available on all platforms. All right, Adam, what to you was most impressive about the Jokic performance on Saturday? For me, like it was a bounce back performance. He had shooters hitting that was going to like open up all the entire offense. Tell me what you thought was so strong about that Jokic performance on Saturday.
What's funny is it's a game where I felt like the team around him is really fitting his skill set really, really nicely. I mean, this goes Monte Morris, this goes Jeff Green, Aaron Gordon, and even Davon Reed. Like if you look at this shooting from that starting lineup, Davon Reed takes 3 shots, Jeff Green takes 2 shots. That's not a recipe for success long term. Like those guys need to, be more involved. But this was a game where they had a rhythm. And those guys, the rhythm for this game was for them to be supporting members. They did it willfully and excellently. And as a result, you just got this like nice rhythm where the ball was starting and finishing in Jokic's hands nonstop with everybody sort of working in concert with him. And as a result, he put up this monster 35, 17, and 8 stat line in just 34 minutes. And to me, that it's almost not even what Jokic did that stood out. It's that he was in place to do the things that he does so well.
I know he finished with a -8, but how about Markus Howard? 21 points on 7 of 15. Like he had some bad shooting games when he gotten spot minutes, and I was kind of like, oh, that's kind of weird. Like Marcus never like the one thing Marcus can do is like he's just like a pure shooter. And I mean, talk about a good time for him to be able to fill in offensively and come up, because without Will Barton, I was like, oh boy, they do not have any guards.
Right. He had obviously a fantastic game and shot the ball really well. I'm a little bit of a downer on Markus Howard. And I went back and rewatched this game. I loved watching it live. When I went back and rewatched it, here's the thing with Markus. And it's the same for Facu, by the way, because Facu is shooting like 48% or something over the last 10 games or 15 games, whatever it's been. Here's the thing about both of those guys. The 3-point shooting is not the thing that I look at with them. Facu, who knows? Maybe he makes it, maybe he doesn't. Markus Howard, I think he will make them more often than not. But it's easy to take the 3-point away, or at least to overplay it. He hit some miracle shots in this one. He's got to learn to score around the rim. You look at an Isaiah Thomas, a JJ Barea, any of your small, undersized scoring guards, they all are fantastic finishers. So if you push out on the 3-point line on them, they get to the rim and they finish off the glass and they have these tough angles. Facu's obviously atrocious at this. Markus Howard's kind of sneaky bad at it. He's not that great of a finisher. And so he made a lot of shots, and obviously it was enough for Denver to dominate this game. But going forward, as you get to know his game more, that's the thing I look at. Can he be a guy that lives either at the rim or outside? And to do that, he's just got to become a really fancy finisher.
He needs to work on scoop floaters like relentlessly. Like that's the move, right? That's what Thomas did. That's what Steph did.
Yep. Steph is exactly like, this is the thing about Steph is he's the best shooter we've ever seen, but he's also like, if you overplay him, he gets downhill and he finishes with crazy finishes.
And that wasn't always the case with him. His layup numbers were genuinely bad in 13, 14, and 15. And then 16 is like when he figured out like, oh, I just need to shoot like underhand scoop shots from further away. And it was like, if you increase the difficulty, he got better at them. It was it's the most wild thing I've ever seen, but it's true. So yeah, that's like a thing for Marcus to work on, is like floaters off the glass from a little bit further away. I would imagine that when you went back and rewatched, that you just gushed about Bones.
Yeah, I mean, he was good. He had some really nice moments. My take with Bones is that I think he needs to take control of that second unit. He's got to be like, the Nuggets need somebody that stirs the pot in that second unit. And I don't think there's any other options for them right now. So in the moments when he's aggressive, looking to be the guy, I think he's right now a little gun shy. He doesn't want to be too aggressive. I think he actually needs to be a little bit more aggressive, because if not, the options when he gets the ball out of his hands are like a Facu drive to the basket, or a pick and pop, which is fine, but not every single time. So I think that's my note with Bones, is he just needs to be a little bit more aggressive, and I think he will be. I think this was a game where he broke out of a little mini slump.
One of their issues, I think, with the bench is that both he and Zeke, like when they're good, you feel like, oh, this is exactly what the Nuggets need. Like, okay, they're going to be fine. Like, because these guys have all this talent, but they're young.
Yeah.
And so they have these like really good moments, but their lows are like, oh, that was rough.
Zeke, I would say with Zeke, that's definitely the case where it almost feels game by game. I think with Bones, at least all we have is this season. He had like a really hot start, a extended bad period. We think it was because of his ankle, but we don't know. But he was bad for 4 or 5 games. Then we had a really hot stretch. Then he got in the COVID protocols and was bad. So for him, it's not game by game. It's almost like 4-game chunks, like 4 good, 4 bad, 4 good, 4 bad. So I'm curious to see if that levels out at all for him, or if he's that kind of inconsistent. All momentum, purely momentum based.
So the Nuggets go. Do you need anything more on Jokic? Do you need more?
Are you not impressed with that game? I know we watch him all the time. Like sometimes I don't want us to get numb to this, Matt. Like I don't want us to get numb. He has a lot of like 27, 13, and 9 games. It's like, okay, that's something. I felt like this one was a little bit more. That wasn't an all-timer, but I felt like it was really, really good.
It was. I think for me, the expectation buys into this just as like, I'm not going to crush him for when he was clearly fatigued in certain spots on the road trip. Right. Where it's like, he gets to have like normal, and his bad games are still pretty good. Right. That's pizza. But like the expectation, I'm like, they had 2 days off. They had multiple days off in San Antonio. Couldn't start another losing streak. It was to basically make sure that the road trip was a success, right? You win that game and you're able to say you went 4-3 on the road trip. You won the road trip, right? You're coming off of a disappointing loss. You know you can play better. It's like primed. That team doesn't have like I love Pirtle. Love Pirtle. Like he was killer tonight in the Pelicans game. Like no chance. Like the Spurs don't have any chance with the guys that they have, and they don't have anything on offense on the other side either to really like put the pressure on either. So for me, this was I didn't watch that one and go like it was just like, oh man, like he's killing them, but it wasn't like this is a really high level performance against in a high leverage spot. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean the opponent matters. I think Pirtle's a really good defender. The Spurs as a team are not a very good team, so you're right. There's a margin for error there, but I just felt like, I mean, part of this is when he makes his threes, his numbers are obscene, and he made his threes in this game.
Yeah,
but I just felt like this was one of those ones, and where he got rolling in that second half, the second half in particular, I just watched him and I go, he could probably put up 60 tonight if he wants, and he kind of wanted to for a while there. He was just going at it. When the Nuggets went up 20. He took like 4 shots in a row, just kind of as a, hey, just as everybody knows, this is really easy to me.
Yep. On the road trip, they go 4-3. They beat Miami, which was a big win, broke the losing streak.
Yeah.
Right? Like that was a big spot.
Jokic dominated Bam. I know that was a very short-handed game, but it was another like test matchup, and it was not even a test. It was a nothing.
They have the letdown spot versus the Magic 2 days after being on South Beach.
If it weren't for that game, Matt, this road trip probably gets an A.
Yeah.
Honestly, if it was just that one game, I would say, yep, that's an A road trip.
They beat the Knicks, another great feel-good win. That was a great
game.
That was a great performance by both Jokic and Zeke.
Right.
The Bulls loss was that Bulls team is really good.
Right.
Given the Bulls situation, it's a little weird, but I just think that they didn't have it that night, right?
Bulls are really good too. Like you need a good performance to beat them. They were shorthanded, but
took overtime for that Pelicans win, but they got it. But the cost was probably that game the next night versus the Spurs.
It's fair. Yeah.
Like if they had lost the Pelicans game, I bet they win the Spurs. I bet they win both versus the Spurs.
Man, that's interesting. Maybe.
And then they win. So they go 4-3. And you're right. They play the Wizards. They play the Wolves on Wednesday. And then it's back all the way to the East Coast. They have Atlanta, Brooklyn, back to OKC, home for Charlotte, and then a West Coast trip versus the Clippers and Warriors.
So
that's fun.
So they have 5 road games, or 5 out of 6 road games, like after this little 2-game homestand. It's so dumb.
Yeah, well, let's see here. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Of their next 13 games, 4 of them are at home. They play 9 road games out of the next 13 games.
They're almost done with road games for the season after that.
They are.
Like 8 left or something.
I mean, that's crazy. The thing is like the rest of the way is like they're going to be home and they're going to be pretty rested because they don't have a lot of back-to-backs.
Yeah.
Again, like this was the whole thing coming into the season. The problem was They got hit with the injuries. Like if they gotten hit with injuries, honestly, in the second half of the season, it would have been easier to manage. They got hit with injuries at the front end.
Right.
And I will say this, like my confidence is wavering a little bit on the season. Long term. And the reason is just this is taking so much from not just Jokic, but everybody.
Yeah.
Like if, you know, it's just a matter of everybody looks like that first Spurs game, like the Aaron's had nights where it's just like he just doesn't have it.
Right.
And so, and like they're so shorthanded. They're asking so much from guys that should not be asked what they're being asked to. It's tough.
I'm curious if they win these next two at home, which I think they'll be favored in both. I'm curious if they have a little more pep in their step, because right now I'm with you. I don't know if this is a fun season for all of the guys, but winning is fun. And I wonder if you get a couple wins, you get above 500 if it's a little bit more fun.
Malone has kind of mentioned this. He's a little frustrated that they just keep basically like they went win, loss, win, loss, win, loss, win.
Right.
And he wants them to get like momentum.
Yeah.
And I don't know that their schedule is going to allow for it. You know, it's like, I mean, I'm just going to tell you right now, like they're probably going to lose that Atlanta game.
Atlanta, Brooklyn. I mean, there's a lot of tough when they go to Golden State later in the month. It's just, there's a lot of games you look at that they'll just be underdogs in. Let me ask you this one, though, because they are 13-13. Jokic missed those 5 games. Was it 5 games in a row he missed? Let's just throw out that. The suspension, we'll keep that one. But if we throw out the games he missed because of the wrist injury, where do you think Denver is? They don't go 0-5.
I'm trying to think. They are probably 3 games over 500.
Oh, I think more than that, because 13. So if they just go 2-3 in those games instead of 0-5, you give them 2 more wins. So that means 15 and 2 fewer losses. That means 11. 15 and 11. That means they're the 4 seed, which is what I think they are. So they are not that you can take away injuries. I know everybody's dealing with them, but Denver, you know, without MPJ, Murray, and Jokic, like, okay, that's a little bit excessive.
See, this is like the entire problem for me is I'm trying to tell everybody on Twitter constantly, like, look, I understand that you're frustrated about your injuries. Everybody has injuries. You need to stop making excuses for your team because you have injuries, because everyone has injuries. And at the same time, I'm covering the Nuggets where I'm like, but seriously, like they have like a lot of injuries.
I think 15 and 11 is more or less what I think this team probably is with like average luck at this point. They've just had a little bit below average, but that's okay. 13-13. Sadly, we're only halfway through the storm, as we've just pointed out. I do think this is one of those things where they're probably going to be 20-20 or somewhere around there, but build a little momentum here before you go back out on the road.
Well, we'll talk about how they can do that when we come back. We'll talk about the Wizards game. We'll also talk about some of the injury stuff. I have some ideas I want to throw at you. We'll do that when we come back on Locked On Nuggets. But first, I got to tell you about Built Bar because it's holiday time. And what better way to celebrate than putting a Built Bar in somebody's stocking? You get them something that's low in calories, low in sugar, low in net carbs, low in fat, but high in protein. You get the best of both worlds, delicious and healthy. Instead of candy bar, give them a Built Bar. So many flavors. You're going to have a hard time choosing. You can have a raspberry or a mint brownie. My favorite's cherry. That one's so good. Double chocolate or cookies and cream or peanut butter brownie. Built Bar gives you that extra fuel you need to bust down those mall doors and battle all the holiday shoppers. Or if you're just standing in endless shopping lines, Built Bar can give you that extra something to keep you going. Throw one in your jacket or purse. You never know when you're going to need it. You friends with Santa? Well, tell Santa to throw a few Built Bars in those stockings. With so many flavors, they'd make anyone's Christmas morning a happy one. Also, here's a secret tip. You could use them and dip them in hot cocoa. It makes for a delicious treat. And it's not nearly as bad as dipping, I guess, a chocolate bar in chocolate. I don't know who does that. But anyway, you can do it with Built Bar. Like some of the marshmallowy treats around the holidays, you can get your hands on the Built Bar Puffs. They're light, fluffy, and marshmallowy through and through. Different flavors, all covered in chocolate. Tastes so good, you won't believe they're filled with protein. Go to Built.com and use promo code LOCKED15, LOCKED15, and get 15% off your order. That's LOCKED15 and get 15% off your order at Built.com. We're also brought to you by BetOnline. Adam, I've been on a tear. I've been on a heater. I've been on an absolute inferno streak. Do you want to know? Like I will say, like I had a rough start to the season. My last week, I went 26-15.
Nice.
26-15 with a 32% ROI. It has been hot.
I always thought the way you were talking, I thought you might see something a little bit better, but okay, that's pretty good.
Rude. And among those, by the way,
16 in a row. I've got 27 bets in a row I've won, something like that. I don't know.
I did. For me, it's high. And then I did wind up betting on the Denver Broncos today. So bet on the Broncos and the Chiefs to win their games, and they both won. BetOnline remains your number one spot for all the sports action this season. Head to the new updated desktop or mobile website to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use our promo code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON, to receive your bonus. Basketball, football, NHL, boxing, and UFC. Don't wait to take advantage of the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet all your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for making Locked On Nuggets your first listen each and every day. Now make your second listen Locked On Bets, your daily one-stop shop for all your gambling needs. Locked On Bets, hosted by your boy Q with expert analysis and insight from Lee Sterling. It's free and it's available on all platforms. Before we get started with the third segment, I did want to express the show's condolences, not only to the family of Demaryius Thomas, but to all Broncos fans suffering.
Can I say something about this real quick? And by the way, you can always go over and check out my guy Cody Rourke over at Locked On Broncos about this. But this is a little. So I think a lot about the relationship between fans and players and how I feel like it's sort of eroding. And I don't know if that erosion is because of social media. I think that's that's probably the largest part of it. You always hear people say this thing about like, hey, players, they don't owe the fans anything. People always said this with Melo, like he didn't owe Denver this or that or what have you, or this or that. And it's true. Like in the strictest sense, yeah, I mean, it's their lives. They get the choice to choose where they play, how they interact, this or that. And the conversely, fans, their relationship to players, like, I think about booing Will Barton and the way fans sort of like look at these guys, can almost be entitled, I guess, to the way they have. But I hate it. Like, I think these things can be overstated. Demaryius Thomas, first of all, he's one of the best Broncos of the last 20 years, just at a talent. But throw that aside, he's a lot of people's favorite. And the way he connected with the city of Denver and the fan base is, I'm not sure, outside of maybe Peyton Manning, I'm not sure if there's a Bronco that connected more. And when you see it, and in moments like this, you kind of remember that, yes, it's true. These athletes don't owe, fans don't owe athletes this, athletes don't owe fans this. But forgetting the logistics, the like what's right, the rights of all these people, I just look back and I think this relationship is so special often between fans and players. And it's really, obviously, you see how much the city of Denver was affected by Demaryius Thomas. And it just kind of reminded me what it used to be like with fans and players, but also, in my opinion, what it should be like between fans and players in a way that I really hope we don't lose. And I get a little bit annoyed when people talk about that relationship as, oh, they don't owe you anything. You don't owe this to them or whatever. And I always just kind of roll my eyes. I think it misses something.
My favorite football player of all time is Derek Thomas, another DT. And, look, I go on the show, and as a Chiefs fan, like, I like to rib, but I got a lot of I have a lot of sympathy and empathy for everyone, what they're going through. Like, I think every fan base has got that player that was lost that meant a lot to the community. I think I liked your sentiment a lot about that connection with guys. It's not all the athletes. I think that's one of the issues is like social media tries to make it like everyone's fans, like all the relationships are special and like all the players love the fans, and like that's not true. And like not everybody makes those connections. Not everybody makes that time. And the testimonials from his teammates and everything were really powerful this week. And so anyway, I just want to give our condolences and thoughts to the whole Denver community.
I think that relationship is something fans should aspire towards the players they cheer for, the team they cheer for. It's part of, like, sports are so dumb when you really whittle it down. Like, we just root for these guys that wear our team's jersey. But right. I think that there's this part of it of like, it's really fun to connect to these people who inspire us. And conversely, I think it's also should be something that athletes aspire to in reverse of like, hey, do these people only love me for the laundry I wear? Yes. Like there is that truth to it, but don't let that truth harden you to wall yourself off to the actual connection you can make and the responsibility in part that you have from being in the position you're in. I'm not really articulating this the way I would like to, but I just like that relationship. And Demaryius Thomas, I think, exemplified that in a way very few athletes have in Denver over the last 20 years.
Yeah. Let's move on. Let's get back to the Nuggets. So the road trip's over. JaMychal Green is now questionable for Monday versus the Wizards because that's what Denver needed, was another person hurt. So the list is now Jamal Murray, Austin Rivers, who's still in protocols.
Yeah. Austin Rivers would be, I think, a good boost, by the way, whenever he comes back. Denver could use him.
They need one of the guards to like have those nights, right? Like they need like the Markus Howard, like random minutes. Michael Porter Jr., 3. PJ Dozier, that's 4. JaMychal Green, that's 5. For a team that really honestly expected to have at most a 9-man rotation this season.
Right.
I mean, it's tough.
Will Barton, by the way, is also questionable, so there's a chance he misses another game. We'll see.
Yeah. I will tell you that I'm at the point where I think they need reinforcements. And I don't know if that's do what?
A trade?
Either a trade or trying to get a buyout option or bring in somebody from that is not currently playing in the NBA. I think they need something.
I'd be impressed if the Crunkies bought out somebody on the roster. I'd be very impressed with them. I don't think it'll happen, but I would be very impressed. I mean, there's options. They might buy somebody out in like March when the contract's already 90% paid.
Yeah, right. I just am of the opinion that it's funny because you ask me like, well, what do they need? And it's like, yes. You know, if they brought in a center right now, I'd be like, that would help. That would help a lot. If they brought in a guard right now, I'd be like, that would help a lot. If they brought in a wing right now.
You remember, did you see JaVale McGee's comments the other day where he said, if Phoenix would have traded for me instead of Denver, we probably would have won the championship last year? I found that one really, really, really interesting and almost like a little painful.
Yeah, let's talk about this. I want to talk about this because people are really frustrated that he didn't play.
Yeah,
people are really frustrated that he didn't play. And like JaVale's having a sensational season. He is like he's having a sensational season in Phoenix. He is legitimately like deep dive, watch the tape, just like watch the games. You will notice JaVale McGee. He's having probably I would say his best season of his career, quite honestly.
Wow.
In terms of like helping winning, not just like numbers, but like helping winning. I would also caution that if you are a big that has veteran experience in the mechanisms of pick and roll and NBA defense that has played for as long as JaVale has, and you are put next to Chris Paul, you are likely to have such a season.
Right. Yeah, of course.
That was not the case in Denver. I don't know. I haven't asked this question, and maybe like if we were allowed in the locker rooms, maybe we would have gotten like a sense, right? I don't know why JaVale didn't play.
Right.
I don't have an answer for it. I will just tell you that for as much as fans think of the idea of him, it does not match the reality hardly ever across the long-term span of his career.
JaVale McGee is just a stand-in right now for a center. Because you're talking about trading for a big or trying to acquire a big. And that it's less about JaVale himself. It's more just about there was one. It wasn't used. Like now there's not one.
Right.
Just to me, the whole thing is just so like I just can't talk about it seriously because I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. There was 2 of them last year. Neither played.
Yeah. And I think I identified it as like an issue, right? Like I've never been a JaVale guy, but like I was in preseason, like on the media preseason call was like, hey, why didn't you guys get a center?
Right.
And I do think it's interesting from the like here's a good counterexample is Utah. I think Utah is a great counterexample of this. So Utah has their franchise center, Rudy Gobert. Right. And he's the core of their system defensively, and he provides the gravity at the rim, which opens up a lot for their guards, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
I think his offensive rating this year, like when he's on the court, their offensive rating is like 135 or something ridiculous.
Like legitimate. And like as much as the screen assists are made into a joke,
Right.
Rudy Gobert is a legitimately great screener, and screening in the NBA does matter.
Yeah.
And if you don't believe that, go back and watch the JJ Hickson days when he slipped everything. Never going to let that go. So Utah has Gobert. They brought in Rudy Gay for an option to play small ball 5, and they've experimented with it, and they're continuing to work with it. As if we need to, can we go to a stretch where we just play small ball and switch everything? Can we do that? And they're working on it. And some of the numbers have been good, and some of the numbers have been bad. Some of the games have been good, and some of the games have been bad. They also brought in Hassan Whiteside. And Whiteside is Hassan Whiteside, but he's also having a great season, especially in terms of impact, because that system is very easy for a center of his type to succeed in. And Hassan, to his credit, is not trying to do a lot of the things that Hassan usually does. He's not just chasing numbers. Now, I don't think Hassan plays in the playoffs. I think in the playoffs, it's going to become Rudy plays like 38. Gay plays some next to Rudy, but like plays like, I don't know, 7 minutes at center, and they go with like another option at 5 somewhere else. But the point is that for the regular season, the Jazz do have an option. They do have another center. They do have a stand-in. If Rudy Gobert has to miss a game, the Jazz are not going to be totally up shit creek because they do have a stand-in. There's no stand-in for Jokic because of what he does offensively, but you do need somebody to just fill the size. Right?
Yep.
And like, I think JaVale, and like, you're right that JaVale would have been that guy, but this is, I would think, is where the problem came in, is like the Nuggets could solve problems last year with their small ball unit and with Jokic playing like basically 40 minutes a night. And so there was an argument to be made that they were better off like trying the small ball rather than needing center minutes. My counter argument is that this year is not that case. Like, this year's roster needs another center. That's my basic argument.
I get it. I just think there were more than opportunities. First for Hartenstein, by the way, who I think is pretty good. Another center having an impact on another team. And then obviously for JaVale McGee. And it's frustrating because I have one complaint about Malone. Again, this isn't a big one. I think he does a great job. He's right coach for his team, all that stuff. But if I have one complaint about him, it's that I do think he sticks to sort of, this is what we're doing, this is how we do it. And you stick for it so long and you lose opportunities. I watched, even you like, and look, again, this is not a complaint. Sometimes you have too many good players at the end of your rotation. But I watched even Jared Vanderbilt tonight really make an impact for Minnesota. And I go like, that was a guy that maybe it was worth riding through some of the ups and downs with him. He just never really got a chance. And again, he was the end of bench guy. It makes more sense why he didn't get his opportunity, but it is just the MO. If you go back to several years, you look at it and you go, there were guys that could have contributed that just never got a chance for whatever reason. And that's the one consistency over the last 7 years. That's sort of a negative on Malone's record, in my opinion.
Yeah. I think I've thought about Vando, like honestly, them including Vando, I was kind of like, but I just think
he was never going to play in Denver. He was never going to play.
Right. And that's the problem. And that was like a lot of it is like, they had too many young guys. They needed to reshape it, et cetera. Like Vando would be amazing right now. Vando's exactly what they need. Like he's big.
He's a good player.
Yeah. And he's been great for Minnesota, who got a big win versus Portland tonight, by the way.
He also seems like a Malone guy, which is funny. Like he just plays hard.
Yeah. Yeah. Like
does all dirty work, plays hard.
Yeah, I mean, Malone was probably like wasn't probably the one that wanted to lose him. I think Malone was probably in the mindset of like, no, I like Vando, but we just don't have any time because we're trying to make the playoffs, But there's also just like, I will say, if you're trying to make the playoffs, it is rare for you to be a playoff team that plays 11 deep.
Yeah, for sure.
There are teams that do it. There's teams that balance it, and their coaches are really are geniuses, and they have enough job. This is better. It's less about a matter of how smart you are. It's more of how much have you proven to how much job security do you have?
Right.
Eric Spoelstra plays a bunch of guys where I'm like, Jesus, what a heat.
Maybe honestly maybe that is it. Yeah, Eric Spoelstra is the best counter to this because he's both a great coach who's a hard ass and like principled and this or that, but also one that's like, hey, rookie, you're going out and starting tonight. You're playing a bunch of minutes. Like this week, you're just playing 30 minutes a night. So it's a good counter to all that. But maybe it does just come down to the fact that Malone has been on short contracts for the last several years.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't think Toronto would give him up. What do you think about Khem Birch?
I don't really have like a good scouting report on him.
Okay. My only other one, I do think this one is doable. Because he was specifically like, it's clear that he was signed specifically to be like an asset, and it's Kelly Olynyk, who would be. I would.
He's a good player. I like him. He's a pick and pop though. I think Denver needs somebody that puts pressure on the rim. I think they need an athlete.
I agree. So here's the difference. I agree with you. Okay, I agree with you in total on offense. Here's the counter. Okay, if you're not going to go with a rim running type of guy, because if you're going to get one of those guys, you're getting him. You might get the athleticism, but you're also going to get the mistakes. You can go get Willie Cauley-Stein right now, but Willie Cauley-Stein is going to drive you nuts because he's going to drop, like you especially. He's going to drop the ball. He's going to make a world of mistakes offensively. He's not going to move it effectively. He's going to space out. But like you can go get him. He's big. And
he is the mold of player I would love. So you know what, I'm for it. Willie Cauley-Stein. Let's go.
But he comes with a lot of he does come with a lot of things that you're just going to be like, Olynyk, I am dead serious on this. He is the best stand-in I can think of in the league for if Nikola Jokic is A+ and you're like, we want a C Nikola Jokic, it's Kelly Olynyk.
He's good. I like Kelly Olynyk. I don't know if I like the Jokic comp, but he is a smart player.
Do you want here's specifically why I like the Jokic comp? Okay. He is probably, in my opinion, the second best handoff big in the league behind Joker.
He's good.
He doesn't turn it over. He's a big body that knows how to box. Like he knows positioning and angles. He's not going to let you interrupt it.
Yeah. He would not be my target, but I do like Kelly Olynyk a lot. I wish it was a better fit.
Like I would just tell you right now, I would trade J. Mike in a first.
A first, man. I don't know.
Yeah. I legitimately think he's worth that much.
That's crazy.
I also think you can play two big lineups with him.
Yeah, maybe. I like him a lot. I wouldn't mind rooting for him. I wouldn't give up that much.
Well, this is the thing, right? If you're going to get anything that's worth it, you're going to have to give up a first.
I agree. That's why I don't know. That's why I think Denver, there's got to be somebody who can claim for free out there that does the job. Because again, are you convinced Michael Malone's going to play this person? I'm not convinced of that. I don't want to pay any more assets for players that just collect dust.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I guess that's like part of the equation, but I don't know. Like, well, this is part of it. I also think you have to move one of the greens if you're going to do that. Specifically, I think you got to move JaMychal if you're going to do it, because you basically have to swap out. You have to say like, all right, we were wrong about small ball.
Yoke just gave J. Mike his blessing, man. He's going to be here for 7 more years. Come on. I think Denver makes a trade. I honestly don't. I think you're right that I think going into the playoffs, they probably buy out Bol and then add somebody to the roster that's not that exciting. But
like I'm asking, I guess my bigger thing is I'm asking you, like, do they need it? Do you agree with me that they need a guy?
No, but mostly just because I don't know that their season's going to go that great. I think that they're going to have to like be a 6 seed and hope that Jamal Murray and they get some momentum. And nothing they trade right now is going to change that. I think you're not. Fine. I honestly think they're fine. It sounds like that was a downer. It's not. I think they're going to be fine. I think they're going to go a run on in January, and then it's all going to come down to is Jamal Murray healthy or not.
Well, I also say this: you're thinking vibes a lot with more of what the front office has taken historically in its approach, and other front offices. Front offices don't make like necessity moves. If they're like, we have an opportunity, let's try and get better.
Right.
That's when they gear up. They don't make like, we're not where we need to be. How can we get where we want to be? Like those are very hard to negotiate because you're up against leverage.
Yeah.
So, this Wizards game I think is tricky. I think it's very tricky, especially without J-Mike, especially, and Ryan Blackburn knows this on Twitter, that Montrezl Harrell has been phenomenal this season. He's been so good. This is like his best defensive season I've ever seen from Trez. As somebody that liked him in college and has known who he's been in the NBA as like a defensive liability, Trez has been amazing. Trez comes off the bench and it could get bad in that second quarter bridge with the Wizards without JaMychal Green, just because if they have to go like tiny.
Man, you're right. That would be like Zeke Naji. I like him, but rebounding is a big question mark to me right now. And Trez he'll test him there and he'll get in his face. Actually, I kind of like it. I hope that he plays because I want to see how Zeke responds to that. I'm not sure if Zeke's soft or not. And that would be a good test for that.
The Wizards are all over the place. They've been in an absolute tailspin.
Yeah,
Like,
they've lost 5 of 6 or something like that.
This is a road trip, but they're looking to like get right versus a banged up 500 Nuggets team. Nuggets coming off of a long road trip. That first game back at home is usually a hard one. Just
my God, look at this road trip. Is this the longest road trip in the NBA? Oh, so they got screwed too. You're right. Everybody gets screwed right now. So they had a 3-game road trip, a 1-game homestand, and then a 6-game road trip. Man, that's 9 out of 10 on the road.
It's rough.
They're in the middle of the second one. So they're on. All right, they're actually this is starting out their 6-game road trip.
It's rough. It's not good. But they will be without Kyle Kuzma. So that actually is a loss for them. He's been good for them. Kuzma's been a really good player. But we'll see how it goes. This one I really don't have a feel for. I don't have a good sense of how this one's going to go. I think this is a coin flip because this is 2 teams I think that are lost a little bit right now.
What about Wes Unseld knowing this team intimately?
Ooh.
I think it's an advantage. I mean, I really do.
Yeah, it is. I think it is. Like Wes will tell him all the things that Joker doesn't like, right? Don't like do this. He hates it when people do this,
Yeah.
Those type of things. All the little ticks. So should be a fun one. You got anything else before we go?
No, that's all. I got more stuff, but we'll save it for the week.
All right. Well,
I want to ask if you think Ben Simmons gets traded on the, early in the 50, because this week is where trades can start happening. It's like the beginning of it, but we'll talk about that later in the week.
Yeah, we'll talk about that as we continue on this week. We'll give you a recap after the Wizards game. We'll be back tomorrow night with a recap episode. Thanks for joining us on Locked On Nuggets. Make sure that you have yourselves a great week. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, and we'll see you guys again next time.